Good morning, everybody. Here we are this Friday morning. We get this wonderful opportunity to get our dose of God's Word and get our day going off in the right direction. I want to look at a statement that Jesus makes over Matthew the 11th chapter. Here he is, John the Baptist is in jail. He's in prison for calling out Herod and Herodias about their unlawful marriage. And he's sending those two disciples back to John. Go tell them what you've seen, what you've heard. And in the course of all of this, what he makes this statement. He says in verse 12, he says, "And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffers violence, and the violent take it by force." Now, something that we need to understand is, what does the word kingdom mean? The word kingdom comes from a Greek word that means rule and reign and sovereignty and authority, those types of things. So what Jesus is saying here is that men come along and they take away the authority of God, what has been ordained in heaven, and they become the authority on subjects and on the Bible. We see a great example that Jesus uses as an illustration about the parable of the vineyard, the parable of the vine dressers, where he gives this illustration. There was a man that owned a vineyard, and he went out on a far journey, and he leased it to men to take care of it. Then the vintage time had come. He'd sent servants to get what was his, and well, they beat some, and they killed some, and run some off, and whatnot. And he says, well, I'll send my son. They'll respect him. And recall that they said, look, here comes the heir. Let's kill him, and then we'll get all of these things. In other words, what the point that Jesus was making, like here, is this, is we're going to take what belongs to God and we're going to make it mean what we want it to mean. We become the authorities. So Jesus saying that from John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven, the authority of heaven, suffers violence. I mean, people are, in a figurative sense, are just stripping God of his divine authority when it comes to his word, and just making things up, making them mean the way that they want them to mean, and the violent take it by force. See, Herodias didn't like what John said. You have no right to your brother Philip's wife, which Herodias was Herod's sister-in-law at one point. They got to fooling around, and so men take it by force. We don't want it to mean that. So what we're going to throw John in jail. Now, eventually he does, lose his head, as a result of taking a stance for the truth. But you see, we can do that with anything. Why is there so much division in the religious world? Why are there so many churches? Well, it comes back to what Jesus is pointing here. People, now, folks wouldn't acknowledge that. They would not say that in any way, shape, or form. But that's really what has taken place. Why are there so many churches? Well, people have violently, spiritually, taken the authority away from God and made their own churches, made their own doctrines, made their own way of doing things. And Jesus says it suffers violence. It means the authority of God is always on attack. There's things that people don't like. There's things that people are going to change. That a very simple comes up. Well, I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. Well, here you go. We're falling into that, what Jesus is talking about here. When we disagree and we come up with our own way of doing things, we're doing exactly what Jesus is saying here. And that can be very difficult to see, because our mind is, might be fashioned on God. It might just be a sincere mistake, but it doesn't change the reality, is that we are attacking the kingdom, the authority of God, and we are changing things. We're taking it by spiritual violence to make it be what we want it to be. Let us not be like that. Let us be as what Peter said in 1 Peter 4 and verse 11. If any man speaks, let him speak as the oracles of God. What that means is just say what God said. If someone wants to know how to be saved, just say what Jesus said. He that believes and is baptized shall be saved. But there are men that have come and taken by violence, spiritual violence, said, no. That's not what all you need to do is pray. What did Billy Graham say? And whoever, right? That's the point that Jesus is making here. Why can't we just speak just simply repeat what God said, because many times that's not what we want. And so we take the authority by violence and strip it away from God and make it mean what we want it to mean. So much of the religious world is just like the days of what Jesus is talking about here. I'm going to leave you to think about that. There's your dose of God's Word. Think about what I've said. Go back and look at this passage, Matthew 11 and in verse 12, and what that word kingdom really means. And let us not take the kingdom, let us not take the authority, the rule, the sovereignty of God, and make it mean what we want it to mean. Hey, hope you all have a great day. Lord willing, we'll get back Monday, and we'll get us another dose of God's Word. We'll see you then.